About a year ago, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, I know a World War II Jeep stuck in a garage which has been standing there for decades and is coming up for sale. Are you interested?" So I immediately went, "Yes!" And later that night, we went to an old timer's house and had a look at this thing. This is a 1942 Ford Jeep, which has been sitting in a garage for exactly 49 years, and it's time to get it out and back on the road. So people who have watched my channel before and seen some of the modelling videos might have realised that I am a bit interested in history, and I find history extremely interesting, and I've always wanted a vehicle like this Jeep because I feel it's just an iconic piece of history, and it's such an important little vehicle, especially the World War II Jeep. So when this thing came up for sale, I just realized I have to just to see how this thing operates and how it works. And I've never ever worked on a car before. I've changed oils and I've changed tires on my own car, but I've never been mechanically trained in any capacity. So the video you're about to head into is going to be of an absolute amateur doing things he has never done before, and I do feel that the footage is going to reflect that. I've tried to organize the video as best I can chronologically and in different sorts of themes, and hopefully if you're interested in one part other than more than the other ones, you can just skip to the part you're interested in, because I hope that at least some enthusiasts might look at this video and see, hey, that's how you do that thing, or that's how you're not supposed to do it, and hopefully someone can learn something from it. But before we head into the restoration bit, I just want to tell you a little bit about this particular car. This thing was built in November 1942, and it arrived in Norway in about 1955 as part of the Marshall Plan. This was done to secure American and European interests in Europe after World War II, and to protect ourselves from the Russians, because absolutely everything in Norway, or Europe for that part, was smashed to bits after the war, so we needed American assistance to be able to protect ourselves. And this Jeep is one of about 3,000 that ended up in Norway after the war. As you can see, this particular one has a split windscreen, and the reason for that is because this Jeep particular one used to be a mounting point for a 106mm recoilless rifle. So yes, if you had about 2 or 3 extremely brave blokes, this was the vehicle that was supposed to stop the Russian assault into Norway. This Jeep was sold from the Norwegian army in 1974 and bought by a civilian who drove it to his garage for modifications and overhauling. However, nothing came of his plan, and this gentleman sadly passed away last year, and he left the car in place, and he did nothing to it at all, which means this car has been sitting idly by waiting for attention since 1975 and until I picked it up in 2022. So if you want to have a look at an absolute amateur trying to do his best to bring a World War II fighter back to life from almost sitting 50 years, then this is the video for you. Let's dive right in. Okay, status update on the Jeep. I'm now ready to remove the fuel tank. It has been disconnected from the hose on the bottom. I have removed the straps, and I have removed this, which I can never remember the English name of. I'll try to remember to pin it right about here somewhere. And I don't know how clear this is going to be for you. There we go. This is the bottom of the tank, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of sediment down there. And also this white gunk, I don't know what that is, but there's a bit of rust in here as well. So we're going to remove the tank now and give it a thorough clean up. So hopefully it's going to turn up a lot better than it is now. I'm now directly underneath the fuel tank, and this little nut has to come off. I have loosened it, as you can see, and I haven't taken off yet, but it is remarkably easy to remove. It shouldn't be in the fuel here now, but I'm going to need the wrench for this, so I'll catch up with you in just a few seconds. It's currently minus 6 degrees outside here, so this little oven is doing its best. Not really keeping up, but you know, doesn't matter because I just got the fuel tank out. Woohoo! And it is complete. No damages to anything. But when we come over here, yeah, this is where the fuel tank used to be, and there is a lot of grime here. So yeah, all of this has been sitting down here and festering. So I'm quite interested in seeing how the tub is holding out. If there's any rot anywhere or rust. I put a little piece of paper down the drain so I don't want to feed this thing into the fuel system. That would be stupid. But I did find some things. I found this gasket. This was all under the fuel tank. It was a gasket, some brass parts for the fuel, a couple of washers. That might be a bad sign. Who knows? That's all part of the experience. Let's see how it goes. So first part is done, at least roughly, and there are some troubling signs here. As you can see here, down above that looks like quite extensive corroding has been going on. And if we look over here, it's not as bad as this point, but the metal is quite thick here. But if you listen, down over here, don't know if you can hear that, but this I can hear. This is a very, very thin piece of metal. It's probably not more than you can see down here. Not more than a millimeter or two, I think. This piece here might have to go. The square here. It's not very good, so we might have our first bit of welding already at the go. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's going to be fun. So in the end, I didn't really replace the metal anyway. I just cleaned out all the 1970s mud the best I could. Then I went over with a steel wire brush and an angle grinder, removed all the rust, and then put out some metal preservatives. On top of that, then I put some primer and some paint. Well, it's working. It has a very nice brownish colour, doesn't it? It smells pretty awful though. I'll catch up with you in a second. The tank is now out and it's been thoroughly cleaned, or as much as I can be bothered to do tonight. It's going to be cleaned properly later this week anyway. But I had to pour the fuel out, and I was really hoping to show you this because it didn't look very good, but sadly the phone died. It's pretty cold here, so but anyway, in the engine in this thing might be some soot and grime. Hopefully this is just the content of the tank, and the rest of the car looks a bit better on the inside, but yep, it does deserve a quite thorough cleaning. So we'll get to that as soon as we can. I also added these felt pads so hopefully the tank won't be rubbing against the metal in the tub anymore. So yeah, just once the tank was all out and everything. For å få av bensinpumpen her nede nå, så er jeg nødt til å ha vekk denne slangen, fordi at den kommer i konflikt med mutteren her nede. Det er ikke godt å se på denne vinkelen, men slangen her må vekk. Og denne slangen har jeg bestilt ny, men den går opp gjennom her, gummipakningen, og så går den bort på filteret. Sånn. Den slangen må ut. So as in everything else on the Jeep, I didn't know that the fuel pump was bad. I just assumed it was, because there is a sort of rubber membrane in there, and I assumed that was cracked and was bad. So I just decided to take everything out, clean everything, and replace everything that could be replaced. So these are all the parts for the dismantled pump. I'm now going to put everything together with all the spare parts down here, and the new springs and things. New impeller, is that what you call it? This gasket thing. I have the instructions up on my screen, so they are very detailed. These things are lovely. You can find all the information you need on Willys Jeeps online. This particular page I'm a radio sales, and they have the pump assembly and all the parts and all the name and all the different part numbers as well. So very handy guide. Let's crack on with this. Dismantling the fuel pump is no issue at all once you got it off the Jeep, which is probably the most tricky part. After you've done that, it's just disassembling all the parts and reassembling. I think it took maybe 3 hours. Keep in mind, I've never done this before at all, and it was incredibly filthy when I got it out the car. Okay, so the problem now is getting the fuel pump back on. The fender, of course, is still in place. Haven't removed that. But as you can see, this hose here from the oil filter is kind of in the way of the bracket, which is up here, which we'll have in place in a minute. We have these two bolts that are holding it in place, and what's remarkable about it is that there's specific locations for these two bolts. This bolt is going on the right hand side of the filter, because the left side bolt is a little tab in it, so you can use a screwdriver to put it in place. Had I known that before I took the pump off, it would have saved me about an hour, because this thing did not want to come out. But as you can see, this is something that someone has made themselves at some point. It's a sort of field repair. I suspect this was customary on all sorts of Jeeps that were going through the yard at that point. But yeah, I'm going to have to struggle a bit with getting this thing in. If you want to see other people struggling with this on YouTube, I have seen videos of that. So this is most likely going to take me an hour, I'm afraid of. We'll see. No camera person here today as well, it's just me, so I'm just going to have to get on with it. And yeah, put the old fuel pump back on. I have removed the glass because I was afraid of damaging it, so I put this original one on, just so it will be easier for me to put it on and not damage anything. We'll see how this goes. So as soon as I saw the condition of the fuel pump, I decided that I had to inspect the entire fuel system. So what I did, as you can see here, was start with the fuel filter. I tried to remove it, it didn't budge. Once I started hitting it with the hammer, it did move and there was fuel in it. But here you can see the condition that the fuel filter was in. It was absolutely dreadful. There was this like mud substance in there. Keep in mind, this thing has been standing still since 1974, and it was absolutely disgusting. It smelled terrible, and yeah, I realized this needs a proper cleanup. The filter, that too didn't look half bad, but yeah, on the top, yeah, awful, awful, awful. Took everything home, give it a thorough clean, and I disassemble it and reassemble it several times over and clean everything. I also removed the entire mounting for the fuel filter because that was terrible as well. And yeah, as you can see here, not great. However, once I started digging into this and made some progress, it did turn out really well. Eventually, this too took a couple of hours, but yeah, I put this back on the Jeep and it looked fine. But yeah, a lot of dust, grime and filth and shit had to be removed. I could immediately tell by looking at them that all the rubber hoses on this engine had to be swapped out, so I just started tearing into them. And as I was dismantling all the hoses, I thought, hang on, why don't I just keep on working on the cooling? So that's what I did. So I decided to remove the radiator just for better access and to inspect things better. Got this fan assembly, I took out the fan as well, and continued working my way inwards from there. Nå skal jeg ta av termostaten. Det er 3 skruer rundt om her. Og så skal jeg se hvordan det ser ut nede i motorblokken, hvor ille det egentlig er med rust. So here I removed the thermostat housing, and as you can see, the gasket, that's probably done its job, but all the rest of it not terribly great. There was a lot of rust and residue down there, and the thermostat, yeah, that thing was not budging. That was heavily rusted and pitted and was absolutely stuck. The thermostat there is held in place by a retainer cup, and getting the retainer cup off was terrible. As you can see how I use screwdrivers, and all this residue here came from inside the thermostat housing. And eventually I got it to move slightly and was able to pull it off, but this too took hours to complete. The condition was terrible. Terrible. Ja, vi fan skapen. Aj. Ooh. Nasty. Huh. So as you probably see from lighting in the background there, this was the night before Christmas, and I was on the kitchen bench fixing my thermostat. And yeah, I got everything to go, everything worked fairly nicely, and I was very pleased about myself. And I was happy to go right outside and work on the Jeep had it not been for the extreme cold in Norway. And when I said fixing the thermostat, I didn't really do that. The thermostat was broken, so I had to buy a new one. I drilled a small hole in it as per the instruction of the manual, and then put in the original retainer cup, and this should work perfectly fine. Very happy about it, and I now have a working thermostat. So since I was already working on the cooling system at this point, I just decided, let's just remove the radiator and see if that's okay. So I brought that home as well, to the delight of my wife, showered it, and then put it in the shower, filled up with water to see if it had any leaks. It didn't, so that was a good sign, I thought. But I'd always noticed that the water level in the radiator was very low, so I thought maybe something else is ruined, possibly the water pump. So here it's there. I decided to take that up as well for inspection, just to see, is there any corrosion there? Is the gasket in there leaking or something? And it turns out that, yeah, things weren't extremely well maintained in the water pump department either. It was heavily corroded and rusted, and it turns out that it was also leaking. I tried refurbishing it, but you need a hydraulic press or something to take out the axles, so what it ended up with was me trying to refurbish the old one, not really successfully, so I've just kept it in a box, and I bought a new one instead. I don't have the proper tools and facilities to properly refurbish this, so I've just sort of put it away for later, and I will come back to it in the future. The water pump is very easy to remove. It's just 4 bolts, and the hoses that goes to the radiator, and then the belt for the fan. Other than that, you can just remove it. It takes no time whatsoever. And remember to put on the fresh new gasket. I could quite clearly see that there had been some severe leaking from the differentials, so I decided to drain them and open them and inspect them, and change the gasket, because I assumed that they were in the wrong, something gonorrhea. But once I opened it, I could see that the oil in there had turned into a sort of sludge, and I realized that, yep, opening this was a good idea. I then took off everything, removed the remains of the gasket, and put everything back together again. Both the differentials were in a similar condition, which means they were similarly good or similarly bad. So when I opened them, all the gears and everything, they looked very nice, and I thought that since everything moves as it should, then there should be no problem here. So I just left all of that alone. Changed the oil, changed the gasket, and then put everything back together. But I quickly decided that I didn't want to spend money on gaskets, so, or at least as little money as possible, so I bought a couple of sheets of paper, gasket paper that is, and since I was able to remove one of the original gaskets complete, I just sketched them on and just made my own. And yeah, they were perfectly fine. They're still very functional. Then I put them on and they're not leaking. So yeah, good job me. Since I was already underneath the Jeep and already draining things, I decided just to drain the oil in the engine as well. Once it came out, it looked alright, but it did suggest to me it was a bit grey, so I did start to suspect maybe there's water in this. Bit of a concern, but you know, we'll get to that later on in this video, so stay tuned. So as everything else on the Jeep, these nuts were absolutely stuck, but I went at them with a lot of rust solver WD-40 and eventually was able to get the cap off, which then leads you to this nut and this little handy special tool to pull the entire assembly off. And then you have these washers inside and you get access to the rest of the axle. So we are getting a little bit further here. I do believe it's safe to say this thing needs re-greasing, because this it's not really grease anymore, it's more like chocolate nougat or something. But yeah, it's off. I'm going to take care of these shims here, we're going to use those again. And we're going to replace all the grease in here. Let's see if the entire assembly will come off or not. Here's hoping. So thankfully it did come off. There are some nuts in there that you have to take off, and once that was successful, everything came right off, but it looked absolutely dreadful. There was grease and oil everywhere, and if I had been started driving with this, it just wouldn't have worked at all. There were no brakes on this that would be working, and the grease had gone everywhere. So I disassembled everything. I was going to do that anyway to get to the brakes, but there were some sims there that had to be replaced anyway. So yeah, good thing I did this. It's a little bit of set trap again with the terrible audio. It was easiest to just remove the entire plate, and also I do apologize about the jack stand. I do have a support, but it's on my way. My girlfriend ran off with my car, so safety first, I do agree. Nonetheless, this plate definitely, it was much easier to just remove this plate immediately, and then these came right off, and as you can see, there's been filled with grease. Not supposed to be grease everywhere in here, but removing the plate was, yeah, no issue whatsoever. Here are the original bolts. I'm going to repurpose these. So yeah, onto the cylinder. Once I opened up the brakes and had a good look at them, they were in much worse condition than I had anticipated. I didn't realize there would be this much grease everywhere, so that it was clear to me that things have failed at some point and just sprayed grease all over. But I was able to clean it off pretty well, all of it, and I was going to reuse all the parts here except for, of course, the brake shoe and the rings that I can't remember the English name of, that prevents grease from spraying all over the place. But I did also take out the slave cylinders, the brake cylinders, and they were refurbished. All the parts inside them were changed, but it was possible to reuse them, so I did that. So there we go. One Wagner Lockheed completely rebuilt brake cylinder. Woo! Looks pretty good as well. Now there's only 4 more to go. So I thought I'd give a little walk around the Jeep. I do have a terrible cold right now, so my voice is pretty messed up. But let's just go through it quickly here. The front brakes are done. I've replaced everything here. I've overhauled the brake cylinders. So these are the original brake cylinders, but I have used the repair kit. So these things should be fine. The brake lines, the brake hoses, the rubber parts, they've all been replaced. I have not done anything with the brake lines, the tubes, the pipes. They are the originals. I don't think I'm going to replace them. They look to be in good shape. Other than that, condition overall is very good. As I mentioned, both side and the fronts have been completed. I'm now working on this part here where the lighting is terrible. Let me just there you go. And the brake shoes are going to come off tomorrow, hopefully, and the cylinders and the rear here are going to be replaced on both sides because I couldn't get a repair kit for them. So these things will go in brand new. I've disconnected the brake lines over here and I'm taking the drum off, and this is quite incredible to me. As you can see here, there is about a centimeter of grease in there, just a thick layer. You can see I removed part of that with my finger, and I've never seen anything like that anywhere. So no idea why they packed this completely with grease, or if this is normal. No idea. You live and you learn, so I'm just going to have to find out, I guess. So this side is going to be it for tomorrow, and I managed to do this side, completed all of this tonight. So we're going to go over the wheel bearings and everything over there tomorrow as well. I'm going to clean that up real nice and fit it with new grease. So things should probably, hopefully, turn out very nice after that. So that's the Jeep for tonight. I'm going to leave it like this and we'll come back tomorrow. So this is update number 2. Now I have installed all the brakes, which is fantastic. There we go, this side is done as well. And I have cleaned these. So these are ready to go back into the Jeep. They're going to get one more spray of brake cleaner before I'm going to repack them. And then they're going to go back on. And don't worry, they are in order, so I know which one is going to go where. What I was most pleased with was that I figured out how the brake adjustments worked with these taps back here. So you have to hold on to the bolt here with something, and then loosen the nut just a little bit, and then the brake will just smack back in. And to adjust them, you do the same thing, but you have to push the brake, then you push everything out. I'm terrible at English, but if I remember it, I'll tag a video where Team G 503 did something similar. But now the hub just slides on like that. Woo! Great. And over here you can see that's this way you're supposed to adjust the brakes in here. You can see the brake shoe in there. There's little slits, but these slits are only on the 2 rear wheels. Don't know why that is. There's nothing on the front over there. So learning to adjust brakes, that's going to come up very, very soon. Now I had some issues with removing the master cylinder. I tried to take it out from the top first, that didn't work, so I struggled for a bit, tried to look for guides online and tried to look for solutions in the manual, but they all said that you have to remove the fender. I didn't really want to do that, so I tried to figure out a solution without removing the fender, and I did. You can actually remove it from the bottom. Sit rep, I just found the solution. This heat shield, this comes off. I didn't know this, but it's just 2 screws. You can see the first one up there. I've already taken that off. That goes into the master cylinder. And then there's this screw here, which I've just removed. This goes through the frame of the Jeep, and you can take that off. And then the entire heat shield assembly comes down, and then I have access to the master cylinder, no problem. Brilliant. So I guess all you professional Jeep owners out there who know what you're doing, you're just shaking your fist in the air, you can stop that now because I figured it out. Woo! So there it is. I managed to get it off, but having the wrist removed was not as straightforward as I initially believed, because I had to get this bolt out, which was fairly easily, but I also had to adjust this bolt and take it out a little bit, and then get a crowbar in here to pry it open so I could slip this thing out. But it was manageable, and I think this is by far the easiest way to access this. Now I have complete access to everything here, and then at least not this is the electrical contact with the brake lights, which will also have to be taken off. But as you can see, there is quite a lot of oil up here, and grease and stuff. I'm not very happy about that. If you have any ideas where this could come from, please let me know, because there's not a lot of grease on the engine. It's just mainly around the steering box, so I suspect the problem is in there. But I don't know. I'm an absolute amateur on this. But anyway, master cylinder is now accessible. Yay! So the entire thing goes together actually quite easily, but it is quite fiddly, that's the only thing. I did it a couple of times. I forgot to put the locking ring in at some point, so I had to dismantle everything again. But once the locking pin was in, it's quite easy to replace the master cylinder. I think for the refurbishing kit it was about $20 US, and for a new cylinder it was $70. So yeah, definitely refurbish it if you can. So there we are, the cylinder is back in place. Yeah, came out pretty good, I'd say. These connections are back on, the brake lines are back on, these nuts are back on. This nut is a little bit tricky because you have to put it in and attach this bracket here. Put the bracket on and the screw in as at the same time when you're putting in the brake cylinder, because or else it's not going to fit because of this out layer here. These two nuts are getting in the way of putting that bolt on later, so you have to put this on first and then the bracket as well. Then there's a small bolt in here, that's all attached. Then I'll put this locker in here, the same up there. As you can see my fingers on the pointing, that's the rod that goes into the cylinder, and this is of course the brake pedal that goes up there. So it's all in place now, very very good. Next thing is, where is it? No, I can't seem to find it. It was there somewhere. But that is to put on the sheet of metal or the bracket that was here to prevent the master cylinder from getting too hot, because it is very exposed to the exhaust. So I'm going to put that bracket back on, which is attached under here and under here, I believe. I can't really remember now. But I'm going to put those back in, and yeah, then we're in business. So it is another terribly cold day, but we're back on the Jeep, and the plan for today is to get the wheel bearings back on and to grease them up, and then put the wheels back on, and also hopefully bleeding the brakes. I have started with that and just taken the lid off the master cylinder and started filling it up, but I'm waiting for a friend of mine to come and help me. It is fairly cold today as well. This one was left here yesterday. Yep, I'm not gonna have a lot of water today, so that's a shame. But we are pretty close now, I feel, to getting this thing drivable. I just want to go in here for a closer look so you can hopefully see. There's the master cylinder. I did cock about a bit with putting brake fluid back in it, but hopefully that will turn out nicely. So we're going to open. No, that's the wrong bag. Where is it? It's here, of course. We have some new grease for our wheel bearings. Gonna slip that one on there, and hopefully the bearings are gonna be fine after that. I have inspected them. They look a bit, there's a bit of grease in there, so I'm going to go over them one last time with the brake cleaner. But yeah, they are perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable, so we're going to reuse them. I do however have the new rings. They're going to go on. So those are here as well. I'm waiting for these. These took a bit of time to have delivered, but here they are. The old one were pretty shot, so I had to replace these. These were quite inexpensive though, so no biggie. So there we are. Just going to wait for my pal now so we can finish the brakes. But I'll start cleaning the wheel bearings for the last time, and hopefully I can roll this thing out tonight, which would be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to start it up and see if it moves under its own power. That will be tremendous. And that's why it's difficult, because these are going the wrong way and what I was prepared for in my mind. So it's not just because I'm a man and multitasking, that's thinking that, but it's the opposite direction of what's natural. That's the issue. Also the same thing with these here. The groove in the ring is also going to fit in the same groove as the other one did, like so. So this go underneath the first nut. So when this is in place, we can put the next nut back on, which is slightly more damaged, I will admit, but the backside of it is still perfectly good, and there's no problem getting the socket on this. So we're also going to reuse this nut. That's the second one jammed back in place, and as you can see here, this disc or ring, I don't know what to call it, I am very sorry, I forgot my dictionary at home today. But what's important with this one is that you bend it down so it locks the nut in place, so the nut doesn't unscrew itself at some point. For that you will need a large screwdriver, much larger than this, which I have not got here at the moment. Maybe if you have a tiny crowbar you can get that in there and fold it down, but I will have to go and scavenge for more supplies to do that, but I will do that as soon as possible. There we go, it's now been properly folded in, so that nut is not going anywhere. Now it's just a matter of reinserting the axle, and this side of the Jeep is good to go. So just going to slide it onto the axle here, without damaging anything. That's the go, at least. There we go. With all that back in place now, it's now time for the lock nut. But before putting that, we need this. So this goes in first. Again, I can't remember the names if they are shims, not shims, but these round discs. So put on that, and then the lock nut, and we can tighten that down, and then we're going to introduce the lock pin that goes through the nut. I don't know if lock nut is the correct term for this. Again, English is my first language, but I'm trying my best here. So we'll tighten this one down, and took the Jeep out today to give it a thorough clean up and washing it a bit. So now I sprayed everything down. I'm going to go over it with degreaser now, and things turn out to be a lot better than I expected. All this grime and dust has been taken off, and there's no rust here whatsoever. Looks really good. It has been treated at some point, don't know with what, some sort of coating of some sort. But all the grime and dust coming off now, and yeah, it's starting to look pretty smart, I think. Okay, so the battery has been connected. I'm going to see if the lights work. Then I have to operate the light switch, which is here, this one, and I'm going to pull it out and we'll see if there's light on it. So you guys will be the first to see if there's light on this thing. Let's see. There we go. That's the first adjustment. How's it looking? Oh yes! Oh wait, but the headlight's not on. Why are they not on? But we have lights. We have this. It's filled up with electricity. Fantastic. This is great. Should we see if she turns over? I think we're going to do that next. Wait, no, let's check out the brake light first. I'm going to take you with me and my chair, and we're going to see if the brake lights work. But for this, you guys are going to be the only witnesses. Okay, let's go. Brake lights. Okay, I'm going to cut you off now because I'm too excited to see if the brake light works. Let's see. Not really much of an indication going on there, is there? Wait. I think you can hear it. We have indicators. Woo! We have the other one as well. We have 2 sets of indicators, and not only that. Look at that. We do have indicators. That's fantastic. Good news all around. Okay, let's crack on. We've tested the lights. Maybe it's time to see if she rolls over. There's no fuel in it. Nowhere. I drained even the carburetor and the tank. Everything's drained. But let's see if she wants to roll. She should be. I have cranked over several times. So we're going to see if the starter moves. So if everything catches fire at this point, you guys will be the first to know. Okay. Yes! It works! It works! So that is the first starter, or that's the first time I have tested the starter, and see if she rolls over, and she does. It doesn't sound very sporty, I know, but it is very cold out here. After all, this is early spring Norway, so it's about 0 degrees Celsius out here. But I just wanted to check if she rolls over, and she does. So next step is to go and get fuel, and hopefully it will start. But this so far has been very good to know. I do have some lights, no headlights, no brake lights. That's we're going to sort that out. We're going to get some new wiring and test the light bulbs and get a voltmeter so I can check if we have electricity up to this point. But the starter is doing starting things. So let's fill it up with fuel and see if the carburetor makes the fuel happen, and hopefully we can take it on a test drive by the end of this day. It turns out we absolutely have headlights. We just have a knob of an owner who didn't realise that he has to pull the other lever as well. So buy your manual, folks, and read them. But yes, you have to pull on both of these. There we go. No lights. Oops. Lights. Oh, there they are. It just takes a bit for them to come on. So there we are, we do have proper lightings, and as you can already see on the tailgate, we do have this light, which is not the correct one, but since this car was rebuilt as a gun jeep at some point, hence why the arse has been cut out of it, I suspect there has been some adjustments to the wiring in there which isn't stock. So this will need to be addressed if we're ever going to get the plates on this and make it road legal again. But this is great news, absolutely fantastic news. We have the lights we're supposed to have, they all work. The 6-volt battery is carrying this thing perfectly. And yeah, I mean, what more can you really ask for? So yeah, generally happy. Oh, the indicators don't work when this is pulled all the way out, maybe. Let's pull this one back in. And now it's not indicating. No. Okay, there is some figuring out here which I haven't. Remember, I have never driven this car before. I never owned a car like this before. So there is some getting used to it for me as well. So, back to the manual, continue reading, and yeah, today's been a good day. So let's go get that fuel. Okay. So there's a manual latch down here so you can pump it. We'll see now if it works. It should be drawing fuel from the filter at least. There we go. We have fuel. Did you see that? Hey. There's fuel to the pump. So at least we are now drawing fuel from the filter at least. So the fuel pump is working. Thankfully. I just fucked it up. I took the hand crank off and I went back and tried to start it and he fucking fired right up. Okay, we're gonna do this again. Hopefully it works this time as well. Choke, ignition. I don't know if you can see it, but this thing is smoking. She just fired and I missed it. Jesus Christ, we'll do it again. Okay. I'll put you back on. I'm so fucking excited right now. Jesus, I'm sorry about this, my camera stand is very wobbly and I'm really excited.
Hørte du det? Hørte du det? Jeg hørte en lyd som vi ikke kjente på, så vi ikke setter i kjøkken start på. Det går så. Det er sett for noen olje. Ja, den er thermostat, skulle du ha det. Å nei. Ja. Så blir det jo styr der. Men altså, jeg har hatt den 6-voltsanlegget en stund. Og det var flere som ikke fikk start på det der. Så gikk han etter. Skal vi se på oss bare med 6-voltsanlegget da. Vet du, vi hørte nesten ikke at han pekka rundt. Open starta.
Nei, jeg håper han får gjøre det. Den virker!
Så vidt bekka rundt, men jeg sa den er strømløs, jeg.
Ja. So the plan for tonight is to swap out this thing and have the exhaust work properly so I don't wake up and alarm my entire neighborhood to the HOA. Doesn't come over here and shut me down. So I have all the parts I need and some silicon, but I don't have an angle grinder of course, so it's going to be some manual labor cutting off the pieces because I have to remove some excess metal because this originally is welded together, so I have to cut out some of the welding to fit this new one on. But no biggie, I have the tools I need here. I have a charger for my phone and a friend of mine dropped by with a case of beer. So I have an entire case of homemade beer, which is just great. So I'm going to enjoy that and some not copyright free music when I do this. So I'll see you later on. So if you're wondering how long this took, about, well, I'd say 40 minutes maybe. With these two, I've worn them both out, but at least the result has an angle to it, so you know, angles are good. But for the other bit, I'm just going to take it off the manifold and take it out because there's no way I'm going to get to that part down there. So we're going to take this one out. Thankfully it's just 2 bolts, one here, one on the other side. So that's coming out. So here's another job I did while you guys weren't watching, and that is that the muffler here, it was completely rusted out. There were several holes in it. It was no good. It made a terrible racket. So this thing is new. It was fairly simple. Just I used the original bolts and the original bracket over here, and on the other side it's the same thing. There's, yeah, ignore this mess. It's just some sort of sealant. And the original bracket here, I also use that as well. But the muffler, that is completely new, and the rest of the piping, that's the original one. And it seems to me that that's completely fine. There was another hole on that side where I had to remove and put in a new tube, as you can see over there. But I think the exhaust should be fine now. So I'm going to start her up, and hopefully the sound is going to be good. So you find me now having disassembled the starter from my Jeep. It's very late, and I forgot to take footage of any of this. It's been disassembled into these 5 components. This is just the dust cover protective shield going around the top here, and yeah, I disassembled it into different parts here. And I've never disassembled a starter before ever in my life. I don't think I've ever seen the inside of one either, so I don't know how this looks. I can tell it's worn a bit on top. There are supposed to be some drag marks here, I know, if things are bad, but they don't seem very bad to me. And there are some locks here that also look fairly good, but I suppose they have to be replaced, at least that's what I've heard. Also there are some of these, don't know what these are called in English. Maybe these will have to be replaced too. I don't know how worn they have to be before they need to be replaced, don't know. So what I've done is that I've just cleaned everything, taken dust and grime off, or at least most things you can see. On the inside here, it's still pretty filthy in there, so yeah, I'm going to have to clean that up as well a bit. All of this dust here, that came from the outside of the starter motor, so pretty bad. Then I'm going to have a look inside this thing, and look at the elements in here. Again, I've never done this before, so I'm going to have a friend of mine have a look at this, who is a proper mechanic. That's it for the starter motor. Hopefully I'll remember to take some more footage of this as we progress. It's very late and right now I'm going to go to bed and continue on this tomorrow. Just had my friend who's an expert on starter motors over, and we went through everything, and he said that thing looked fine. It's perfectly serviceable, just put it straight back in, and it was last serviced. Don't know if you can see that on here, in 1969. You can barely see it when the lighting is correctly. So probably this thing has been running for less than 5 to 4 years since it was last refurbished, so I'm just going to give it a thorough clean and put it back in. So I'm just going to take this pad here and put on some brake cleaner and clean it up, and it looks like this before. Once it's clean with the brake cleaner, it looks a lot better. So I'm just going to clean everything up and assemble it and put the entire assembly back into the Jeep. I'm not gonna say it purrs like a kitten, but it does make noise. The Jeep moves. So I fired the Jeep up a couple of more times, and at some point I realized there's a lot of white smoke in there, quite dense white smoke. So that hadn't been there before, so I thought something's gone wrong. Got inside, started googling, and what was most likely is that water and oil has started to mix somewhere. Either there's water in the oil or there's oil in the water. So that could be a good indication that the head gasket of the Jeep had been blown. So there was only one thing for it. I had to take the head off the engine and inspect the gasket. So the top has to come off, so I'm doing the prep work now, just removing all the fittings and loose ends. And one of the things I removed was this pipe. This is a new part. I bought this because the Jeep didn't have a radiator hose. And there's quite a bit of grime in here, as you can see. The rust in there. Yeah. This part was brand new. just a couple of months ago. So there is a bit of rust in there, so I'm going to have to clean it out properly. So the plan was originally to just fill it up, the radiator, and then add some radiator cleaning in it and just drive it about, changing the radiator more or less regularly. Just run it for 15 minutes, change it, fill it up again, run it 15 minutes, change it, fill it up again, and do that several times. But I can't do that now as I have water in the oil, so I'm prioritizing getting the head fixed, and then we're going to have to clean it out afterwards. So get the head off, and then hopefully we can clean everything. I hope. And that is grey. It did not look like that when it got poured in, but this is fairly bad, actually. So I think I'm gonna put the car up on jack stands and drain everything out of it and see if there are any chunks in the oil pan. Hopefully it's not, but this is not good. So yeah, lots of water here, so the top is definitely coming off. So the oil pan is coming off. It came off quite nicely, just these bolts all the way around it, but I did put it on a jack so it doesn't fall down immediately as I took all the bolts out. So now just a matter of unwinding the jacks down, and then I have the oil pan all free. Brilliant. So on a scale from 1 to 10, I think I would rate this. It's not terrible, but there is some sludge in here. So good thing I took it out. I'm going to now clean this all properly, get all the sludge out, put it back on, fill it up with oil again, and after we had the top done obviously, and hopefully that will make the life of my engine a bit better. So we can go over here and have a quick look how things are under here, and things aren't looking too shabby when looking at it at first glance. Oil's covering everything. I'm gonna clean up the filter too, obviously there's some sludge in there I suspect, so I'm gonna take that off, clean it properly and put it back on. And all that remains of the gasket is stuck to the block, obviously, just to make it a bit easier for myself, so that has to come off as well. But hopefully I'm going to have all of this fixed by tonight. So, fairly optimistic now. This didn't look as bad as I thought. So, we are back on track, he said, with a stupid smile on his face. We'll see. There we go. We are going to move you over here for a quick look. I don't really know what I'm looking at yet, but there is some rust on these studs. Maybe some of these will have to be removed. But all in all, just with first glance, things doesn't look horrible, I think. So we're going to clean this off, remove all the excess piece of gasket that are stuck on there, and hopefully we're going to get a good seal. I'm going to start cleaning now and get back to you. Hopefully I don't find any cracks and the block isn't leaking. Hopefully, we'll see. So, as I took the head gasket off, I saw some potential issues, and this was one of them. I studied the gasket quite carefully, and I thought that isn't it a bit strange that this area here has been absolutely worn out, and there's nothing left there of this other outside layer on the gasket. So I thought maybe water pressure has blown the gasket in this area, and the water has ended up in the cylinders. But I still went on to control other things, and I wanted to check if the head was warped or the engine was warped, and as you can see here, it absolutely was. I had this true edge laying on top of the head of the engine, and it was about 0.15 millimeters off. So this was most likely my problem. The head gasket was also gone, but I think this is what was causing it. So I took the head off and took it with me to a machine shop, and they machined it for me, and hopefully that would solve the issue. So this is the day we're going to put the head gasket and top back on it, and I've cleaned this now thoroughly several times over with paper towels and regular towels and spirits, just to clean everything up so there's no sediments or gaskets or piece anything left. And the top came back after it was machined, and it looks absolutely beautiful. I used this rifle cleaning brass rod just to clean out all the oil and waterways in the top, so that they will hopefully flow unhindered. Here's a new gasket, and what I'm about to do might be controversial because I heard all sorts of different things about how to put the head gasket on this engine. And what I have decided to do eventually is to just put the gasket on. No copper spray, no gasket seal around the bolts. There's been discussion on this all over the internet, but I've listened to my local World War II Jeep Restorer forums. There's a group of quite a lot of guys, and the consensus was no copper gaskets, spray, and no sealing. So we're just going to put the gasket on like this, and then top back on, and then we're going to be very, very careful to torque everything down to spec afterwards. And if that doesn't work, it will just have to come off again, and we'll do it again. But this will work, I'm very confident. So I got a bit excited and I talked all of these down. I didn't film it, but I'll see if I can remember and put the specs up on screen somewhere, maybe over here, maybe over here, I don't know. But everything has been torqued down. There's a different torque on the bolts and on the nuts, so you have to be a little careful with that. And there's a very specific order you have to torque all of these down in. I'll put it up on screen somewhere. So what I've been doing now is just assembling everything else, put the wires back on, the plugs, and now I'm going to start assembling the temperature gauge. No, that's not what it's called, but I can't remember its name. But I need a new gasket, and we're going to put all of this back on, and we're going to fill it back up with water, and hopefully I'm going to have this thing running in a couple of hours. I just decided to drain the engine as well, because this little valve, which is supposed to drain the engine, is stuck. So I took it out and drain everything out and get this little rascal working again. So yeah, not too bad. That's manageable, no problem. No! So Sitrep was about to bolt this thing down, and this happened. I even torqued it down to spec as well, but this bolt, yeah, as you can see, it wasn't very good. Something really terrible has happened to this bolt, and I didn't notice this when I put it in. But if you compare it to one of the other ones, yeah, that's what a bolt should look like. And there's this one. It looks like it's been split. So it's been ruined. Thankfully, it didn't break all the way into the hole, so I can probably get this thing out. So, a little bit of a setback, but nothing critical. Okay, so everything is back together now, and that took ages because once all of this, the top was back on, I reattached the thermostat, which had broken, got replacement bolts, those are in now, and I put on the hose again. I filled the radiator up with water and coolant, of course, and when I did that, I had a leak. So we had leakage out from under here on the thermostat. No, on the I can't remember the name of this thing anymore, but it's what's tells you the temperature of the engine, and also on the drain plug down there. Both of them were leaking quite heavily, so I had to attach them, and that took some time because the this tap down here where you drain the engine, I just couldn't get it to hold water, but eventually I did. So now everything is back together. I have filled up the fuel filter with fuel, I filled up with oil, we have all the liquid we're supposed to have, so it's, I think, it's time to put the battery back in and see if we can get this thing running. And I just discovered, once filming this, that we have a leak over here as well. There's petrol there, so we're going to have to take care of that as well. Brilliant. So the Jeep still doesn't want to start, so I took up the bracket down there, which connects the starter to the engine block, and just take it off, and I'm going to go over there with a sandpaper and hopefully get a bit of connection. As you can see here, it's been painted. So, yeah, this might be why the 6-volt in system have some problems starting this thing. I will do other things as well, but I think this is kind of pressing if I'm going to get my Jeep started tonight at least. So I took this piece, which looks like this on both sides, and I filed it down, and hopefully this should work. I've also done the same thing down on the engine and on the washer and the bolt. So we're going to attach this back on. Hopefully it's going to have some results. I just had two experts here. The guy I bought the Jeep from, he was here, and he's a former mechanic, and we tried to diagnose what this ticking noise is, and he concluded with a 95% degree of certainty that it is one of these valves. It's not the rod bearing. He was absolutely convinced it wasn't that. It's one of the valves, and it's probably one of these two. Don't know which one yet. But the result is the same. I'm going to take all of this off. The carburetor is coming off, and the exhaust and the intake manifold, both of those are coming off as well. And maybe I'll have to remove this entire fender. I'll have to see. I'm just going to remove this first, and then we're going to see if I can access the valves down here. They're hidden behind this cover here. So we're going to take all that off and look at how things see how things look underneath there. So that's the plan for tonight. I'm going to start working on that now. Another thing we did when they were here was that we adjusted the timing on the Jeep, and that's done by adjusting the distributor over here. You take off the nut down here and the bolt, just untie that a little bit, unscrew it a little bit, and then you can just turn the entire distributor one the other way, depending on how the Jeep is supposed to run. And it idles pretty good, at the moment, so we're going to leave it at that. So there is my carburetor, and as you can see there's still some fuel in it. This came off no problem. The only thing I have to be careful is, yeah, I'm going to clean all of this up. I didn't have access to it before, but all of this is going to be cleaned thoroughly. Put that away. But I'll have to make sure that all of these little tiny pieces, that all of these get back where they're supposed to be. All this is going to be cleaned up and then going to be put back on. But before we do any of that, we're going to have to continue removing pieces. This gasket here is also going to be replaced. I can see down there is some residue and things, so I'm going to continue working on this tonight, and then I'm going to get back inside and order new parts, but hopefully this thing is going to come right off. We'll see. So we have a success. The valve cover is off, and it's now time to start inspecting some valves. I never done this before, so I'm going to have some expert help me along the way here as well. So far it's oil in there. I know that's supposed to be good, so yeah, looking forward to doing that. Finally, I was able to source these two things that I'm going to use to compress the springs. And these two are brilliant. You can see here these are original things. So this one in particular, it's pretty neat. I finally know why my valves are not working as they should. There's the locking pin. It's not lost in the engine. It was stuck in there in two pieces inside the spring. So no wonder this thing has been absolutely torn to shreds, and this thing was just laying around because this was broken. Thank God it wasn't in the engine somewhere. I was actually terrified that these two were just, that this was just living in the engine somewhere. But I have now solved it, and not just that, I have replacement parts. Woohoo! So we're just gonna continue with this. This plier works actually really well. I'll take you in here for a closer look. I'll just change the lighting for a bit. So there we are. Now we have a spring that moves as it should, and I have a closer look at the valve, and that appears to be absolutely fine and in order inside of there. I don't know if you can see it, but I did have a close look at it, and I think the valve is perfectly fine. So I'm going to reuse the valve and the spring and everything. I'm just going to put on a new set of valve spring locks, or whatever they call those tiny little pieces. And then we're going to adjust all of them and see that there's enough clearance. It's supposed to be 0.14 millimeters in there. I believe it's on the top of the engine. Let's see. It says up here. Yeah, exhaust clearance, and it's not millimeters, it's of course in inches. So yeah, that was actually very good. I found everything, and there's nothing lost pieces in there. Now we're just going to put everything back on this thing, and hopefully I have a Jeep engine that runs well. We'll see. Sadly, I have an absolutely terrible stand for my camera, and I am just one man. So working on the engine and filming is a bit too tricky for me, so I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to see this as I do it. But the plan is to lift this valve right back up with the valve pliers, whatever you call them, and put these parts back in. But I am a bit scared they're going to fall into the engine, so I put a piece of paper there so it doesn't fall into a hole like this into the abyss and ruin my engine. So I'm gonna lift this up, put these pieces back on, and then hopefully the engine is ready to run. So this is probably the closest thing I'm going to get you to it, but in there is where we're going to install the protection for the valve and also the new locking pins with this fantastic pliers, sort of, that takes the tension, put the tension on the spring so I have access to it. So I'm going to do that now, and hopefully don't have the spring fall on my fingers. I'm going to lose a finger tonight. We'll see how this goes. So apologise again for terrible camera angles, but I'm going to try to explain to you what I'm doing here. I'm now going to adjust the valves, and that's 0.16 of an inch. Don't know if you can see that over there. There you go, 0.16 of an inch. It's supposed to be 0.14, but mine feeler gauge only is it's 0.16 and 0.12. So what I thought I'd do is make sure that 0.16 is too tight and 0.12 is too loose. And I don't know if you can hear this, but it is fairly tight right now. But it's still moving. So I'm going to have to tighten this a little bit more. And I have a 1/2 inch wrench here, but I will have one of them, but thankfully 13 millimeters is almost exactly the same. So I'm going to put one wrench down there and the other one on the nut up here, and then I'm going to gently adjust these, very gently, so that now that the 16 is almost too tight. A little bit more. That was probably way too much. I'm going to try it now with the 12 inch feeler gauge. Yep, that one. So let's see here. No, 12 still fits. So we're going to adjust it a little bit more than that. It's going to be a little bit tighter. And then we are approximately where we're supposed to be at 0.14 inches. So that's how you adjust the valve, I think. Again, don't listen to me, I'm not a professional. I've learned everything from YouTube and the manual on the Jeep. But yeah, I think we are making progress. Oops. So now we have the exhaust manifold back on. Everything on that is okay. So now we're gonna hook the oil pressure gauge back on. And again, I'm just gonna get any very good camera angles of me doing this because it's very tight down here. I'm just gonna screw these two together. After that, it's time to put on the carburetor with a new gasket. But we'll get there in a very short period of time. So everything's been assembled now. Everything's back where it's supposed to be, I hope. So I'm going to try to start it and see if everything happens. It is fairly late. Yep, it's almost, it's half an hour past midnight. So hopefully all my neighbours are sleeping very heavily this evening. I'm going to give it one shot, and if it doesn't start, no biggie, I'll come back tomorrow. But hopefully it just fires right up, and it sounds awesome. There is some rattling here. Oh my god! This... I've taken that one off. Well, there's the problem. There was the ticking noise. Jesus Christ, I took that one off because I had to adjust the screw on the carburetor. Well, that's no one. I didn't fire on cylinder 3. Jesus Christ, what an idiot I am. Okay, let's fix that and let's get right back to it. Jesus Christ, it's too late. And I'm an idiot. Don't know why it does that. Listen to that. That's fantastic. So while working on the back of the Jeep, I realized there are some things missing. So I bought these, and I'm going to put these on, these handles here, and these were most likely removed by the Norwegians when they converted this into a gun Jeep. And I know I've stated several times I want to keep this as a Norwegian gun Jeep, but I just feel like these handles are so iconic to the World War II Jeep, so I'm going to put these on anyway. And it doesn't really interfere with the gun on the back there, but it does interfere with this box here, which is possibly the reason why they were removed in the first place. But I'm not going to put the box back on, because then the entire vehicle is going to stick out about this far, and I don't think I'm going to have that being road legal. So the box isn't coming back on, but instead the handles are. Please. Okay. I did genuinely, for originality, took these modern bolts and I actually ground them down. So you can see on top there, you can't see that once that's been painted. It's just a stupid detail, I don't really care about it, but you know, it just looks that little bit better, so I just did it. There we are. Now I'm going to secure that in place and then drill the other 4 holes. The other 3 holes. And then the other 4 on the other bracket on the other side. I don't think the words "pleased with myself" will ever be able to cover the emotions I felt when this car was finally done. So the first thing I did, obviously, was get some temporary plates that I can drive it, which means in Norway you have these temporary plates you can drive for 24 hours. So first night I was able to go for driving it. I drove 8 miles and it was just fantastic. Everything worked. The Jeep just plowed on and nothing went wrong. Everything from the brakes, the lights, the fuel tanks, everything just worked. There were no leaks, nothing. It worked absolutely beautifully. So I went to all the locations in my town because I'd finished the repair of the Jeeps in a quite timely manner because I was supposed to get married 3 days after I got the Jeep up and running. So obviously we used the Jeep for our wedding, and it performed, well, kind of like this.
Så sa vi kläder och här står skal för där och du är silverfin och drömmar som går kan jag vara sidan för vi får lov att leva idag.
And once again the Jeep passed with absolutely flying colours. It was an awesome day, and having my own car that I'd personally restored there as well was just the tip of the iceberg that really made it into something quite special. But after a quick honeymoon, it was back to work for both me and the Jeep, so we started with the next objective, which was completing the gun for the Jeep, because I had been invited to an agricultural show along with my local military enthusiast vehicle club to portray the Jeep, because no one has seen a gun Jeep like this anywhere near I live before, so they wanted to put it on an exhibition, and I was more than willing to comply with that and help them out. So me and a friend got together, and I bought in a lot of materials and equipment, and he helped me weld everything, and we made a very simple and very quick replica of the gun that would have been mounted in this Jeep at some point. It's just metal parts, like these brackets and things that we made, and a PVC pipe with some other smaller parts like these valves that we just added on just to make it look the part. And yeah, it turned out pretty damn good, if I'll have to say myself. So once we got the Jeep on the trailer, the paint on the gun barrel hadn't even dried up, but we had to go immediately because the show was going to start in the next hour. So this is how it looked when we got up there. As you can see, there were a lot of other great cars up there. A Russian gas, I think it pronounced a Volvo, with a trailer, and then a Dodge, of course, and a GMC. And yeah, there were loads of people there, and it was absolutely fantastic meeting everybody and talking to them, and lots of kids were coming up and asking if the gun was real, and they'd never seen anything like this before, and it was just so great to be able to talk to people and show the car off, and it really captured the audience there. It was just fantastic. But the kind of final thing I want to tell you about was that there was going to be a parade in my town the same night as this agricultural exhibition ended, and a group of American car enthusiasts had arranged a huge parade with all their cars. I think it was about 400 cars that was going to run up and down the street where I live. So I thought, great, we'll have to sneak into that, and that's what we did. Been sitting here for about 25 minutes now. Thankfully the thermostat is telling me everything okay. So let's just see. There are a lot of great cars rolling about, but I don't think any of them have their own artillery piece. So hopefully we're going to generate some laughter. We'll see. And I do, of course, wear the correct uniform from the Norwegian Army in 1975. So yeah, this should be very fun. I wish I'd planned this a little bit better. I would have had a cameraman with me, but I don't, so I can't show you how it's going to look like down there. But it is quite a lot of people. I think this is going to be good. I'm going to show it the Jeep for the first time. Wish me luck.
Hei!
Jeg kjører ingen steder uten panser da.
Nei.
And that was it. That was the culmination of about 7 months of working on and off this little Jeep. Thinking about what it looked like and the condition it was in when I bought it in November last year, I think it's come a pretty long way, and I'm super happy about having it back on the road. At the moment it's just temporary plates, but I am hoping to get this thing road legal with or without the gun, probably without. But anyway, it will be back on the road, hopefully later this year or next year, don't know. There's been an absolutely amazing little project. I've learned a lot of things that I'd never even heard about before. Adjusting a carburetor, for instance, it's been super fun working on this thing. Some of you might have been a bit annoyed about the way I went about things. I started with the brakes and worked my way up from there. That's just because I had absolutely no confidence in myself as a mechanic, and I didn't dare start with engines and gearbox and things like that. But working on this thing, I gained the confidence to continue on this project and started doing more and more difficult tasks. So that's about it. I genuinely hope you like the video. It's a very long one, but hopefully if you want to see more of this thing, you can give me a heads up in the comments, like the video, and yeah, maybe this thing will show up again. Thank you.